Hello everyone, my name is Zim Ahmadi, peminat muzik tegar budak baru belajar. Today we'll be reviewing the Venopian Solitude's second album, Hikayat Gundik Berirama. Tiring, overwhelming, emotional roller coaster. This album is all of that, but in a positive way. The Venopian Solitude's second album definitely shows growth from their debut, Hikayat Perawan Majnun, because as Takara Suiko and her band finishes up and polishes her sound, this album also takes a lot of very bold risk in its act of storytelling and in its act of instrumentation and arrangement. I think the best thing about the Venopian Solitude so far is that there is no other band comparable to them. Like, this philosophy, ethos, and approach is not exactly new. I mean, the word experimentation is thrown around a lot when it comes to music journalism, like especially to describe something that is moderately left field or out of the norm or slightly weird. But I feel like the experimentation that the Venopian Solitude takes up is definitely audacious, encourageous, and innovative in its own right. Listening to Hikayat Gundik Berirama can make you feel a lot of things, but none of those things will be boredom, right? It's been so long, this wait for the second album, considering that the debut was released back in 2014 when Takara Suiko first joined Kaksi Gegar Entertainment, which is a label by Aizat Amdan, and when she finally found her band, because before this she was a one-man person to boot, right? And the reason why this album is consistently exciting is because every song tells a story, but also because every song has its own production uniqueness to it. The thing about this album is there is also a very clear protagonist. The protagonist here being the Gundik, right? Or concubine in English. The naive, slightly foolish, but hopeful person that goes through her pursuit of fame, but then eventually finds that fame isn't all of that and finds her own destruction. And the thing is, it's very structured and chronological, definitely, but the unbridled instrumentation creates a really weird and warped world around it that you forget that there's a story being told. Teenage Hate Records on their Twitter has cited Captain Beefheart's album Trout Mask Replica as a reference. Like, they said that this album is a combination, I think, of Trout Mask Replica and IRAMA MELAYU. And Trout Mask Replica is a great avant-garde album, right? Like, Captain Beefheart does some really weird stuff in that. It's melodiously adventurous, it does weird things with music, but this album is based a lot on the fact that Captain Beefheart does not, train himself musically, classically, so he's not really well versed in terms of notes. So he does all these things based upon bold amateurism. Hikayat Gundik Berirama, on the other hand, is not that. There is mastery here, a lot of deliberation and creative decisions that are planned, right? And the fact that the band itself is an ensemble of stars consisting of people like, Shafiq on percussion, Adam on keys, and you have people like Ruvi Yamin, who's a multi-instrumentalist, also Irina Tait, who's a guitarist on this band, who's also from Impatient Sisters, of indie folk band in Malaysia. You have good musicianship. Just the arrangements and the storytelling is what makes it really exciting. I could list down a whole lot of other influences, like Bjork is here, Kimbra is here. If you listen to some of the more hip-hop cuts in this album, yes, there's a hip-hop cut. You can even hear some Open My Eagle in there as well. But, overall, this is not them being pretentious or derivative. This is Takahara Suiko and the Venopian Solitude planting an original flag on a new mountain altogether in the Malaysian music scene. So to really explain to you why that is, one of the most fun things about reviewing Hikayat Gundik Berirama is the fact that it feels like I'm reviewing a theatre script. And it actually is, considering that the album is separated into 4 acts and 4 chapters. If you can say that, and every chapter is punctuated by a narrator introducing what this chapter is going to be about, and this narrator musically falls in line with everything else and doesn't seem out of place. And this kind of foreshadowing is what really makes this album kind of unique in terms of the storytelling genre of music. But the other thing that also enhances its storytelling is the album art, right? You can see the album art is, a picture of a heart. It's designed by Uliu and then Iliani. The album art in this album, which is a picture of a heart, is the way it is because it reflects the kick beat and bass line drumming thing, musical motif that happens throughout the album, which kind of reminds me of a heartbeat rate. So that's why it sort of represents that. The iconography is very obvious. You can see that motif even under layers of other kinds of instruments and production. So let's go to the first track of this album. Chapter 1, Hope. The first track introducing the act of Hikayat Gundik Berirama is Layar. And Layar is itself a very hopeful song. It starts off with this melancholic, whimsical flute. And it's really cool and catchy. But when it first came out as a single, I didn't really like it because of how it transitioned. But in the context of this album, the transitioning works really well. Because the song starts off really optimistic and bright, with IRAMA MELAYU traditional influences in that, but also some electronic influences as well. And it gets bleaker the more you listen to the song. That's what makes it really cool. And it's always a joy as well to see Takara Suiko harmonizes with herself, which she does a lot in this album and in all of her previous works. Track Layar starts off with a disembodied narrator, like ominously singing the lyrics that are actually found in a later song called Pelacur Music. And the lyrics are, "Lihat muda pujangga, terang hati lahirnya, takkan kubiarkan jiwa suci dipersetan." And it's a foreshadowing for evil things to come. You hear that kind of foreshadowing in the beginning of every chapter, as though it's like a preface to what's the chapter going to be about, right? And there's also the clapping and the stomping thing that happens. Well, more clapping than stomping. And how the clapping counterpoints the sort of like washboard sound on the percussion really adds color to all these tracks and happens a lot. In fact, you realize that this clapping thing becomes more and more muted as the story gets darker. Next song is Madhouses. Madhouses is the most experimental cut in this album. It's wacky. It feels like a jar of video game soundtracks, put together and just shaken up. Especially in the breakdown after the first pre-chorus, it's like a huge Grand Prix. Like the claps in here are exhilarating too, especially to Taka singing, burning down while people are clapping. And the synths and the chanting of Madhouse, it feels like a fever dream, like a House of Mirrors kind of stuff. And I love how it comes together in this splendid cacophony. It's magical. And again, it transitions to a rock opera, but it's still really good considering that it complements, the uncertainty and anxiety of the protagonist in this play. I can't be sure exactly as to what Madhouses is about, but it feels very riotous. And with lyrics about mad spouses burning down mad houses, for example. Like, are the concubines revolting? Is this chaos finally unfolding so early in the story? I don't know, but this is a mad good song. But beating it is Jauhari, the third song in this chapter. And Jauhari is like this combination of plunderphonics and chiptune music that sort of like combines like the sampling of everyday objects to make squeaky sounds, and that sounds sweet but actually is pretty sinister. And I love that, all of these things combined creates a whole other sound for this song. And the way in which the key seems to be in conflict with the percussions, but then the tension is broken by this fiery guitar is really exhilarating and cathartic to me. Like, Jauhari is also really cool because it uses all these electronic influences and percussions to create a very foresty, tribal kind of sound that makes you feel like you're going through a jungle. And that kind of innovation is the sort of stuff why I love the Venopian Solitude even more in this album. And the laughing and the madness in this song is also really good, especially when Takara sings, satu persatu dikubur sejarah lalu, lelap bertafakur. It's like a battle with personality documented in mania, that kind of stuff happening in this album. And Jauhari comes from the perspective of someone, I think, who sounds like he's both peddling dreams, but also giving a warning at the same time. Like, jangan dipertahan syaitan yang direjam, naik kepala hanya untuk yang lupa neraka. I love the double meaning in this track as well, considering that Jauhari can both mean a jeweler in Malay, but also a really educated person. So it's sort of like a wise man is speaking to this protagonist, but the wise man is being duly ignored, unfortunately. Chapter 2, Strife. In this chapter, you see the protagonist finally arriving in this darker part of society where everything feels bleaker and darker and grim. And, this is the red light district, this is the back alley, the underground clubs, the organized crime, all this stuff happening here. This is the struggle that she's going through. But also this chapter, I think, is a testimony to how even when the songs in this album are more conventionally structured, it's still really exciting and fun to listen to. Like none of them is bland. And the first instance of that is Ziggurat, right? Ziggurat is very much guitar and drum bass song, but the symbolism in this is cool because the ziggurat is a pyramid in the Babylonian Empire, and Babylon is often used as a parable for immorality in the Holy Scripture, for example, often called the Babel or Babil, depending on which Holy Scripture that you read. So that imagery is cool, but the perspective as well is cool because it comes from a person who wants all of this to change, right? You can hear this in the lyrics, like "Dengarlah rintihku yang ingin kau maju," or to the person, pointing out the powers that be with their fraudulent intentions who claim that they can protect you, with lyrics like "Sesaat tercengang, makin teruk dilaga, didomba diluka, konon pejuang warga." Next track is Run. So Run is a slightly contained noir song. It has a little industrial element to it. I love how it also kind of sounds like a sci-fi soundtrack, layered over a lounge room piano sound. It's almost like a factory assembly line as well. My favorite line of the album is in this track: "Consciousness is your commodity. More loss would be more gain in money." It's so evil and jahat. Like I love that that line in here showing how crude this world is. The last song of this chapter is Camaraderie, the first feature in this album that we're going to talk about. And the first feature is Lawani Gang, a group of rappers, right? And these people work so well in this album, considering that the Venopian Solitude uses rappers in a way that doesn't just complement the music, but also acts as characters in the story. I love this because the way the rappers are presented in this track make them sound like the way Damon Albarn would, point out a character in his Gorillaz project in a lot of these songs, especially when it comes to these rappers admonishing or telling another side of the story or becoming demonic souls. And it explores the complexity of being in a group, this song, Camaraderie, or a gang where you lose yourself, but you feel like you can do anything, especially in the line, "In this camaraderie, there's nothing you and I could never be. But in this camaraderie, there's nothing you and I could ever be." And when Lawani Gang comes in with "Apalah nasib, mak dah cakap jangan keluar time maghrib," it's so good. It's so comical, but also very like sinister, like Hyena and Lion King sinister. Like, there's probably a noir gangster film that has already used this line before, but I think it's Sabala and Morifa, rappers of Lawani Gang. My minor gripe is that I'm not really a huge fan of Takara Suiko's rapping, especially when she raps in English, because, it's not that her lyricism is boring, her lyricism is good, but her flow is sometimes a bit monotonous to me or not too exciting. So it's good that she has, Lawani Gang complementing that particular flaw of hers. But when she raps and goes all out in Japanese, it's good. It's mania trying to contain itself but slowly exploding into many pieces kind of stuff, right? It really sells this track. Oh, it's one of my favorites. It's freaking dope. Chapter 3, Rise. This is the part of the story where the Gundik finally finds her fame or is walking onto the threshold of fame. And it starts off with Deras. So Deras is a more solidly rock cut, except for the extending part in the second leg. And, it's not much in terms of musicality, but I felt a love for the lyrics from the very beginning of the song. Like, "Berkilau bersinar di hujung jalan yang makin benderang, tewas si bulan mahupun langit, namun hanya cahaya yang menjerit." Like, I love that line because it uses the light as a metaphor for fame or like passion or entertainment or money or greed, but the light is so stark that it overshadows the moon and the sun. It makes you question, like, is it really worth sacrificing all of this natural beauty or all of this organic beauty? And it's hinted in one stanza, but I just love this piece of poetry by Takara Suiko that I really enjoy. Next is Brace, featuring Eza Bara. This feels like it could be a part in the Gundik's journey where she's training to be strong and, more resilient in the chaos of the entertainment world. She has to brace herself, right? I mean, the parallel is pretty obvious, especially with the lines manic expressions telling off kittens that they are worth nothing in the lion's den. The lions being the more established or the corporate people in the music world, the entertainment world, and the kittens being up-and-coming artists looking for hope and passion. And Isabara, the former vocalist of Salam Music and also a vocalist, poet, and musician in her own right, sort of acts like a mentor or friend. And she advises against the horrors, but also telling the protagonist to, steel themselves, like stand steadfast, henti mengambil kisah, ayuh kita hadapi putarannya. I love that line and that relationship and dynamic that Aiza Bara and Takara Suiko has in this album. The chemistry is clear, and this track shows that. Next is Pelacur music. This is the climax of the story of the Gundik. Why? Because it starts off with this foreboding and suspenseful beginning that starts with like this nightclub kind of feel. But the nightclub sounds like it's at the center of like many dimensions and many stories coming together. But it's actually a gateway to hell of some sorts as the music becomes more darker and gritty. And it's full-on rock opera. There's no gimmicky stuff in Pelacur music, but it doesn't need that. Like, it contains echoes from all the chapter introductions in this album, like, Lihat Muda Pujangga Terang Hati Lahirnya in the very first chapter. It's all in here, and this is where you realize that she's just become like a prostitute to music, which is what this song is about. And is that really a good thing or a bad thing? Whatever it is, she's falling in that hole. And it's a brilliant climax and peak to this Gundik story. Chapter 4, Fall. This is where the transition from Pelacur music really reaches its deepest pits. Story-wise, not quality, of course. In fact, the next track, Bubar, is one of my favorite tracks in the album. It's apocalyptic, and the fact that it starts off with this very minimal a cappella bit, sang in that IRAMA Melayu traditional kind of way. That's, I don't know, it's kind of like Ulik Mayang, probably. It's so ominous. I mean, you hear that in traditional music, but the fact that it's in the context of this apocalypse where everything is going through destruction makes it so good, makes it so impactful and powerful. And it's all fire and brimstone here. Like, this is the world where people have let themselves be swayed by access and temptation. You hear this in the lyrics, perjalanan yang penuh radang di teman sepah yang habis dikosongkan madu. I mean, that factory sounding, iron clanging again underscores the demonic atmosphere in Bubar. You see the fall of Gundik. Gundik has reached the bottom. But there's also kind of like riotous hope in this as well, like with the lyrics, berontak suara, menggegar fana, terhantuk gugur si wanita, hilangnya punca, panca indera, bisikan akal yang membuta. Like, she's protesting against the pain as she's fallen deeply to the temptations that has brought her to this end. It's dark. It's powerful stuff. Next song is Dust. And Dust is post-apocalypse. Now the chaos has settled and the desolate has become much more clear and stark. The emptiness is more visible. You see the Venopian Solitude stripped down to just Takara Suiko and her electric guitar. In the beginning, with just a few xylophones probably interspersing. But this is it. This is the denouement, the post-climax leading to the end, it's the resolution. And it feels so vulnerable. Like Takara is, or the protagonist is surrendering herself. In this line, for example, there is nothing more I can contribute. I have killed my muse. It's a masochistic acceptance of the end, but also kind of cleansing as well, as the protagonist sings about kissing the apocalypse on the lips, which is one of my favorite lines in this album, while it swallows the beast in me. I mean, this song really deserves to be in this story. Like, it's to make you remember, I think, that Takara Suiko is also an amazing singer with range and power, even if you remove all the crazy productions or experimentation. And this album, it shows, didn't have to be maximalist, or filled to the brim with weirdness. Like, Takara Suiko does this because there's a way for her to tell this story, and she chooses to do it for a reason. There is still competency and musicianship in here. The last song is Phoenix, featuring another artist, Asmidar. I don't think this song is anything special. It acts like a really cool, break before you probably repeat the album if you like it. Sounds like a mantra for resurrection, how we can always stand back up. Like in this lyrics, calling for my soul, having the broken bones in tow. It's an epic send-off. There's a cool, guitar break, and the synths all fall together. But it doesn't really have anything interesting, I think, lyrically or musically. But it's a cool simmer down to the Hikayat Gundik Berirama. So, what do I think about the album then? When it comes to concept albums like Hikayat Gundik Berirama, fillers play a role, like the songs in the album that aren't really as exciting as the other tracks, right? I've said this before in my review of Lasses Terkesima, that not every song has to be powerful, but if it functions as a transitional piece, it works, right? The risk is always cohesiveness. Do the songs fall in line with the overall theme and narrative that you want to push in the album, right? But TVS, the Venopian Solitude, covers this by openly stating that this is a story. I mean, the album is divided into chapters, right? Like, from the fact that this album as well is also called Hikayat Gundik Berirama tells you that this is a play, a story. But the thing about this album is, even if you remove the story, like individually, the songs are either really memorable musical ideas or powerful arrangements with interesting production detail. I mean, there's definitely growth here from the debut, Hikayat Perawan Majnun. Sure, the really crazy parts are in the first half of the 2 chapters if you're in it for the experimentation and the weirdness. But I don't think this album is a race of which songs can be weirder or crazier, right? This is a well-plotted story. It's a well-plotted tale. I feel it deserves to be studied and not just consumed for entertainment. Maybe I'm exaggerating this album because I love it in the first 6 listen, but that's how I really feel. You should read into it. You should study this album as a story piece. A lot of thought was put into this, and the product is freaking amazing. That's why I'm giving this album a 5 out of 5. So, what did you guys think of the Venopian Solitude's second album, Hikayat Gundik Berirama? Did you like it? You have no excuse not to listen to it, even if you don't have a CD player or record player. It's all in their Bandcamp. But if you don't buy the CD, you're missing on all these cool lyrical booklets in here, which is, it really adds to the value or experience of listening to the album. If you have any comments, you can hit us up in the YouTube comment section, or you can follow us on Twitter at ATRMac42, on Facebook as well at Awful Track Record, or on Instagram also at Awful Track Record. My name is Zim Ahmadi. Minat Muzik Tegar Budak Baru Belajar. Goodbye.